unsolved mysteries, unique history, unanswered science, baffling true crime, cryptids, the strange and unusual can all be found here. So, come out of the rain and follow us across the creaking floor, through the secret passage, into the realm behind the bookcase.
All right, so welcome back, everybody. Might be a slight audio difference in this episode. We have two snowballs that we're working with rather than a headset, so hopefully this is going to come out okay in the wash. If not, we're constantly improving the process, so please hang in there with us. So this week, or for this podcast or this YouTube video, whatever you're watching, this episode, whatever you want to call it, we're going over the second episode of the Cecil Hotel, Secrets of the Cecil. And this one, you were just saying that you didn't find this one all that interesting of an episode, but I kind of disagree a little bit because, and I'm glad that we are treating this like we do know a little bit about it, but we don't know what the show is going to talk about. And from our last episode, I think we made a lot of suppositions and had some theories that actually ended up being, I don't know if correct is the right way to say it, or just that the detectives did what we thought they were going to do. Certain people had theories that we thought they were going to have. And
I think that it was definitely interesting. I just think that they went into, they talked a lot about the hotel again, which, is fine, but, and it was interesting. And obviously they got into the meat of the beginning of the findings once they realized, where or what had happened to Elisa. Obviously not the mystery solved, but what happened.
Yeah, and I've got some just quick notes, or I guess we'll just kick this thing off with where they started off. And it's a lot of the ideas that we had, like, given the surrounding neighborhood, given that footage, how would the police react? And I think we were on the right track with a couple of these things.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, one of the best lines when they were kind of going a little bit more into the seedy side of the Cecil Hotel. My favorite line was, it was where serial killers let their hair down. And that said a lot because they went into a little bit about the Night Stalker staying there, and how he would literally go out and kill people, come back, take his clothes off, his bloody clothes off in the alley, and literally walk up to his room in bloody underwear, and nobody ever, it was just normal. It wasn't like that was some kind of weird thing. That was literally how bad that hotel was.
Another day at the Cecil, folks.
Yeah, it didn't,
Yeah, and we were also mentioning the name change, and the name change and a couple of things that they just got into really speak to, I would say it sheds a lot of light on some things that you would just wonder, like, we were talking about, this was a sort of a honeypot or a catch-all for international tourists to stay in downtown LA. But, these are reasonable people. Still, why would you stay in a place like that? Well, we've got information on why that was. They basically created this hybrid environment within the hotel. But let that be a little foreshadowing. I first want to kind of start off with Amy Price. That's the general manager of the hotel. And she sort of started off the episode, and I can't remember if it was a narrative overlay or if it was someone else talking about it, or if she said this about herself. But she said, or somebody said about her, that she wanted to do the interview to show that a normal person was running the hotel.
Mhm.
And that to me is a little sus. Like, what's the motivation to make that statement?
Mhm.
Either yeah, not that you could be hiding something, maybe, sure,
Well,
but also just your reputation, right? Because people have already accused her of maybe editing the footage. They get into that. We'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. That timestamp looks awkward, and maybe that's just how her way of responding. But I just thought that was a little strange that she would make a statement like that.
well, yeah, and I think that's exactly what it was. Is that for years since this happened, people have said like, well, who in their right mind would be managing this hotel? And she was, she just wanted to kind of say, well, I was actually there. I mean, she made mention, I went there. I treated it like a corporate job. I wore the pearls and suits and things to work. And she really took it seriously. And that is what led them to start talking about what they did to the hotel. And I'm going to go ahead and get into that because I think that's really important leading into um, the state of affairs at the time that Elisa Lam was staying there.
I think you're right, and moreover, I think that the her reputation and treating it like a corporate job ties into what we're going to talk about with this hybrid hotel.
Yeah.
And that goes hand in hand
Yeah.
a little bit. So, one thing that I found interesting was the internet sleuths began digging in, and a couple of things were sort of new here. That video went viral, which was kind of a new thing at the time. Um, and internet sleuths really jumping in and digging into a case was, I wouldn't say new, but it was kind of a phenomena
So
around this case.
when you said the video, you mean the elevator
The elevator
footage? Yeah.
footage. Yeah,
Well, I think what happened was that the police actually released it to the public because they were trying to
that's
find
right.
her, and I think they realized pretty quickly that that was a
A mistake.
bad idea. Yeah.
Right.
So that's where people on social media and the different places at the time to discuss these things, Facebook groups and other platforms, people were really just trying to figure out where she was and why this video looked so bizarre.
And to one thing we failed to mention in the first episode is they had like 18 to 20 detectives on this at the very beginning. And there was a famous incident. I want to say it was a downtown shooting at the time.
Well, it was someone that was actually shooting police officers, targeting
Right.
police officers. It
Correct.
was
That
a
was it.
serial shooting case that they had. So they had to pull most of the detectives off of that to go hunt this person
So
down.
they were really down on the resources, and they had a couple of detectives working on it at that point. She's been missing for a couple of weeks at least now. This is around February 19th of that year. And I think releasing the video was just something that they thought, why not? Let's give it a try and see what happens. And maybe that backfired a little bit because it's so strange. It just caused this frenzy of conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And it looks crazy as hell. Let's just be honest, the first time you see it.
Yeah, yeah. And there was it was just it was so bizarre. And I think that coupled with the fact that it was just such a short clip and you just don't have all the puzzle pieces around it, that it is really baffling. But I will
It
say,
really stokes the fires of a vivid. If you have a vivid imagination, you're going to get some
oh yeah,
vivid
yeah,
results.
exactly.
Yeah, from watching that.
Yeah, and oh, just to go back, the shooter was Christopher Dorner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
you're familiar with that case. So
Yeah, we'll
that's who they
probably
want.
cover that at some point
Yeah.
on
So
this channel.
anyway, so yeah, and that does lead me into one of the side notes that some of the the internet sleuths, as they call them, are they had picked out a piece of the video footage where they were saying that they thought it looked like someone else's foot
That
was in the
was
door,
silly.
and it was like really, yeah, it was really obvious it was her foot. To me, it was really obvious.
It's the back, folks, if you haven't seen it, it's the back of the Birkenstock sandal flip flop, whatever she was wearing,
Yeah, you can see her rotate her heel.
flipping up.
Yeah.
Yeah, she rotates her heel, her foot goes off screen, and the sandal follows thereafter. That's how
Yeah.
a flip flop works.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I thought that was a little silly. But this is what happens when the police release a video like this and your quote unquote internet sleuths get involved. I mean, we even have some more modern cases today in social media where people dox the wrong person.
Yeah.
So this is what you open up a can of worms when you do stuff like
But
this
there
a
are
little
also
bit.
people like us and probably everybody that's listening that really wants to help solve the case. Like, what are you going to
Right.
see in here
But
that
know where your boundaries are.
yeah, I mean, well, I mean, and I don't think that was the case. I think it was just like, oh, if you observe it, I could see why somebody would think that for a minute, but as soon as you rewind it and look at it
Right.
again, you probably wouldn't say that again. But I mean, there are some people that probably still thought something different, but which is fine. I mean, I think that that's the fun of it, is being able to just look at everything and try and pick out parts and see what's what.
It's fun. It's just my point is when you get enough people saying a thing, then it may become common discourse that that's actual facts released by the detectives, and it just creates all this visual noise.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's a couple of things that really they pointed out too that really helps explain a lot of the mystery here. So, for example, I did not know that she was bipolar and on antidepressants. So the fact that she was on vacation and taking antidepressants and maybe drinking, so there could have been an alcohol
Yeah, was there a
antidepressant,
drug interaction? That
right?
could have, yeah.
Also, they are in the biggest. They either said the biggest or one of the biggest drug markets at the time. At this time, in the U.S., right outside her door. So,
Yeah.
could there have been drugs involved? Could there have been drug interactions or alcohol and
Yeah,
drug
I
interactions?
think someone on the show literally said that within 1 block of her leaving that hotel, she would have been offered every kind of drug imaginable, from and the real, all the way to the really, really hard stuff. So
Did
if
she try something for the first
right.
time? Did she just buy a dime bag of weed and it had PCP in it? And
Yeah, I
did
mean, she does really it really does look like she is on something. It's interesting because she's steady on her feet. Like, she's not falling over like she's been drinking too much, but she is doing weird mannerisms with her hands. Yeah, she's like reaching out oddly, and she's I mean, she does lean on the back of the elevator and side of the elevator and kind of leans um on the door when she's coming in and out of the elevator. And it didn't look like she was trying to stabilize herself. It almost looked like she didn't see reality, is the way that it kind of looked to me. Like, she
right?
wasn't, I hope that makes sense. Like, she wasn't stumbling, she was not sure of where she was, is what it looked like to
Like if
me.
you talk with your hands, but you're tipsy talking, and you're a hand talker,
Yeah.
and your hands are also tipsy talking. It kind of
Well,
looks like that.
that's one point that I was making with the video itself. I was like, it looks weird, but if there was a reason
If there was
behind it,
sound,
if there's a person at the end of the hall and she's trying to get that person to come go out with her, like, hey, let's go back out, or something like that, and she's waving at them with her hand, but you don't see the person, maybe she's talking to somebody. Maybe she's trying to keep the elevator there so that she can coax this person to go out and party with her some more, or come down to her room, or whatever what may be, because we know she wasn't on her own floor. So it doesn't look like she's feverishly trying to make the door close.
Right.
It almost is a cross between either why is the door staying open or is she causing this door to stay open? I don't know. It's just
I
bizarre.
still get hung on why that elevator door never closes, just from a technical perspective. But that's an excellent segue into my next point. I did not know, and this is another one of those very enlightening. She shared a room with a couple of other girls
Hmm.
or another couple. I don't
No,
know
no, it was
which.
on an all girl floor. So I did
Okay.
know that the part of that. So you didn't realize that she was staying with other people in her room.
I did not. I never knew that, as a matter of fact. And I think that's a huge piece of this. So you're
Hmm.
on vacation, you're staying on an all girls floor in this hotel with a couple of other people. She could have made friends, she could have been motioning to somebody else.
Well,
And I was thinking, if you look at this video footage and you're talking to somebody off elevator this long for 4 minutes and you never see someone else in the door, you're like, well, that's a crazy conspiracy theory. But now, in light of that, it could have been one of the uh, other persons that she roomed with or stayed in the hotel. That's much more likely now.
well, I will say that the part of that story that I didn't know and I thought was really bizarre was they said that she so I knew she was on the on all girls floor with the communal bathrooms and the shared rooms. Um I didn't actually you're right. I didn't particularly know that there were other, more than one other person in the room with her. So they did confirm that. But what I thought was really weird is that they complained about her to management and said that she had been acting weird for days. So she'd been staying
That's
there
right.
for 4 days with these people, and they said for a few days they had complained about her, and they ended up moving Elisa to her own room.
And maybe the antithesis of drug interactions, what if she ran out of or lost or did not take her meds?
Yeah,
And I know bipolar is not a way of saying, in the most sensitive way I can put this, crazy. It just means you have wild mood swings, basically.
yeah, you can.
But is that a contributing factor? It very well could be. So let's go ahead and jump into why someone would stay at this hotel and tie Amy back into this, the general manager, and why she thought this would be a great corporate job. So the reason she really dug her heels in and was concerned about this property is they were trying to rebrand this hotel and gentrify the name. However, the rental agreements had to adhere to being in this area. And as we've discussed before, this is Skid Row. It's incorporated. They had certain rules or laws, I guess, maybe in place, um, where the rental agreements had to adhere to it being in that location. And they had residents that had lived there, tenants for 20 or 30 years, and they couldn't just break their contract. They had to let them continue to rent there. So, what they decided to do.
And I'll just say, not even for they didn't have to like let them live there until their lease ran out. Like they had to offer tenant living or long term rentals.
Due to the area.
That's yeah, that was what it was zoned for.
So, what do you do when you own a hotel that has a bad reputation and a bad side of town, yet you're trying to rebrand it? You just convert 3 of the floors to a different hotel, call it something else, put new paint, carpet, paintings, furniture in it, put new modern decor, make it look Art
They
Deco.
had a separate entrance and a separate sign.
Correct. And even to the point of making a completely different entrance door with that branded name to the left of the building away from the front door. So feasibly, you might not even know you're staying in a place called the Cecil Hotel. You just know you're staying either on rooms 3, 4, or 5, or was it 4, 5, or 6? I want to say.
It's 3 through 6, and the new name
Right.
was Stay on Main.
Stay on Main. It
Yeah.
has a great, fresh name. Sounds very courtyardy, very, Not the Cecil Hotel where Richard Ramirez is staying a
Mhm.
floor above you in Skid Row in downtown LA.
Yeah, the
Um,
branding is very bright and oranges and whites and stuff, and even the branding on the website was changed just for that. And so Elisa Lam, when she went to look for a hotel, that is what she would have seen. Stay on Main, doesn't say anything about the Cecil Hotel, um, or anything like that. So, and it actually got lots of good reviews because people
had
actually
you
enjoyed it.
not encountered one of these incidents or had something happen to you, it might have been a lovely experience, let's say. So we'll give those reviewers the benefit of the doubt on that. Now, imagine this is a time where you're rebranding that hotel. Maybe you are one of those lucky individuals that stayed on that floor and enjoyed it. And yeah, stay on Main was great. I don't even know where the Cecil Hotel is, not knowing that it's above and below you the whole time. At the same time, one of the long term residents said he would never go past the sixth floor because it was dangerous.
Well, that was back in the day, and
But
I thought it was ironic that that was the floor they chose to stop at too.
it was
So it's probably still the
still
same.
a little like that at the time, though, I think
Yeah.
is the point. Even to the point where you would have things happen like people would go on the higher floors to do things like commit suicide. And this one unfortunate woman jumped off the building, landing on an unfortunate pedestrian on the sidewalk below, taking them both out.
Yeah.
So these are just the kind of things that would happen on any given Tuesday
Hmm.
at the Cecil Hotel, now Cecil slash Stay
Stay
on
on
Main.
Main. Well, and I thought it was interesting that someone commented that, it was, so they had literally separated, like we said, the lobby areas, the entrances, the look and everything. But the one thing they could not separate was the elevator.
The elevator was still in common space.
Yeah. And so you can separate everybody you want until a stay on Main person gets on the elevator with a drugged out Cecil Hotel rent by the night person. So
There might come a point where innocent Canadian tourist Elisa Lam is walking to the elevator bank, and from the other side of the hallway, in comes Richard Ramirez in his bloody underwear, and the twain unfortunately meet.
yeah.
So that is still possible, and I think that
Well, figuratively, obviously he's in jail, but
correct,
um, but
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 right.
yeah, something like that, absolutely, yeah, and I thought that was, and I give them kudos because they actually pulled it off up until Elisa Lamb's issue, and so
I mean, as a business venture goes, trying to rebrand
I mean that
with the limitations that we had, I truly believe that Amy and the hotel staff and everybody, nobody wants to work in a bad job in a bad environment, right? And even the maintenance gentleman, and I forget his name, but he's the one that actually later on makes a discovery that we'll come to later on. Um, but some of these individuals have tears in their eyes when they talk about this. So I truly believe that had they the wherewithal and not locked into that limitation of the environment, the area, um, they would have rebranded the whole damn hotel, not
his
just three
yeah,
floors.
his name is Santiago.
Santiago. And
Yeah.
I think their hands were tied to some degree, but they were trying to do the right thing and go in the right direction. So I think that covers a lot of the environment, the motivation, some of her behavioral issues that I was unaware of, and makes things much more clear in my mind on how this could have happened.
Yeah.
There's a lot more clarity I want to say here.
Yeah.
So we now know how this happened. And just to go back to that elevator footage, let's talk about that for a second because I really want to spend a couple of minutes on that timestamp.
Oh yeah.
Since I've seen that footage, um, it just looks like the timestamp is blurry. It was a crappy CCTV camera circa mid aughts, early aughts, late 90s. Who knows when that thing was installed? But the more you look at it, you can tell there's almost an overlay. You can see the clock and the time below it,
But you
and
can't clearly see that either.
something is over that timestamp.
Yeah.
And or it just so happens that there's some pixelation or something conveniently in that area. So I don't know what's happening there. And there's also this, they pointed out on the show, there seems to be this 5 or 6 second time jump on one of the scenes, which this is what's leading into that theory or the conspiracy theory or idea, whatever you want to call it, that Amy edited the video. And it looks like the door is, when it does close, the 1 or 2 times that it closes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. 53-second delay. Thank you. Not 5 seconds. Yeah. It jumps almost a minute. But you can really see it in one of the times when the elevator doors does start working and opening and closing. That I think that's where I got the 6 seconds
Yeah, that
from,
was just
is
6 seconds.
you see the door open and then all of a sudden it's about a foot and a half out and then finishes closing. So it skips.
Yeah, you see it just come slightly out of the door frame, like when it starts to open, and then all of a sudden it's in the middle of the door frame, and then it goes slowly to
Yeah,
the edge,
almost exactly.
and then opens again. Um, yeah, it's definitely weird. And
And the other thing that they mentioned, and you don't notice it until someone points it out to you, and then you can't unsee it. But it seems that the footage at that time seems to have been slowed down.
yeah, could you see that? I couldn't really tell that. I need to look at it
It
again.
I noticed it. Once they said it, I've
Hmm.
noticed it, and
Yeah.
their analysis or estimation was that it could have been slowed down by as much as 35%.
Could you see it in the video itself or just on the ticker, like the time, the way that the time looked like it was moving?
It's the ticker. You really have to pay
Oh,
attention to the
okay.
ticker,
Yeah.
and the way it moves. You can look at the milliseconds, which should be to the far right.
Mhm.
So the ticker is on the lower bottom half or
Half,
bottom of
yeah.
the video, but the milliseconds are all the way over to the right.
Mhm.
And you can see it flipping and flipping, and then it slows down. The milliseconds
Oh,
slows
yeah. I'm gonna
down.
have to look at that again because I kept. They were saying that, and I was looking at the video itself, trying to see what was moving that would look slow. But I feel like it's in frames that don't really have anything in them.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about, and I mentioned February 19th already because they bring that up as a date that was 19 days later. And I think my point was, well, is it? What is our time frame here? I'm really struggling to kind of get an idea of when this video was taken and the time frame because I'm thinking January 31st or February 1st, 2013 could have been the date of disappearance. We don't yet have a timeline. We don't know yet when that video was from. And again, because that timestamp is distorted, I think is a fair way to put it, no matter how you look at it. Um, is that day? Is that night? When is it? So we'll come back to the time frame. I'm going to keep pushing this time frame issue because that's an important thing, in solving a crime is figuring out a timeline. And so far, there's just so many red herrings and monkey wrenches going into the timeline. Um, but let's talk about the UK couple that was staying there. And this is the couple that,
We saw in the last episode, and
yep,
they had just to refresh everybody's memory, they had purchased a travel package that didn't specify what the hotel was. They just knew they were going to be staying in downtown LA, and they ended up here at in one of the rooms for the stay on Main. And when they described it, they said they knew it wasn't going to be luxurious, but they literally walked in and were pretty grossed out from the get go. They said it was the kind of place where your feet kind of stuck to the floor, and it just was kind of gross all around. There, it wasn't that clean in general, but they said, well, we're just going to be sleeping here, so
they
we'll deal
generally
with it.
notice the smell of weed a lot
Oh,
of
they
being
said,
in the building and
mhm,
sounds of parties going on
yeah, it
constantly.
was coming through their vents
Right.
and things like that.
All right. Here's where it's going to get a little dark, folks. So Mike and Sabina Bow, I think is how you say their name, the UK couple. got up one morning, went about their routine, took a shower, brushed their teeth, and noticed a couple of things during this process. The water pressure was low. The water was tinged and dark, and when brushing their teeth, had a funny taste.
Yeah, apparently there were multiple complaints about the water pressure that
Correct.
day. So, or maybe even the day before
Now,
for a couple of
they
days.
in particular went down to the front desk to ask the front desk about it. And is it fair to say basically they were just brushed off?
No, they actually got moved to another room which had the exact same issue.
That's right.
So we know that it was happening in at
Multiple
least
rooms.
both of their rooms. But then when Santiago spoke, he said that he was getting calls out of you know multiple calls about the water pressure and water issues, and that different floors had worse and worse problems.
Right.
So he basically um, I think we should just pick up with his story. I mean, he basically said, there were all these complaints, so it was my job to figure it out. I went into several rooms. The water was not running clear. Some of it was barely even coming out of the tap. And so he had got another person on his staff. I think he was head of maintenance, and so he um, went up to the roof to check on the water tanks because that I mean something that was affecting all of the rooms or most of the rooms couldn't have been just a local clog somewhere. So he said, he was going to start at the top at the water towers. And so he goes up there to check the water towers, and there's a little hatch right on top of the water tower. There are four water
There's
towers,
four tanks
four tanks. I
that
keep
make up
saying
the water
towers, but
system.
yeah,
Right.
tanks. So I guess the first one he opened the hatch of, he looked down and he saw Elisa Lam.
Well, a person.
He said he knew right away it was her. He said, and I quote, "That's the girl we've been looking for."
A couple other things just to give you a creepy visual. She was floating to the top, and for some reason, her clothes were at the bottom of the tank, not on her or around her. So her body is at the top on the water, and her clothes are at the bottom of the tank. Why?
Yeah, and clearly, obviously, the clothes were causing the clog, and obviously, she was causing the not so great
Now,
water.
these water tank lids aren't just open a hatch and see what's inside. They're heavy. I want to understand, and from my understanding, they should be locked
Yeah,
as
he
well.
had to he had to unlock it.
And I believe he had to unlock it.
Yeah, that's it.
Or let's circle back to that. So I think that's going to do it for this one. We've got a lot more atmosphere, I want to say, on this one, and a lot of things that explain motivation, environment. But how do you get on a 15-story building in one of four water tanks, maybe locked, trap yourself in it, or is this homicide? Why is the clothes at the bottom of the tank and the body floating? Now remember, this is 19 days later. There could be body bloating, distension, body distortion. The clothes could have come off, but I think that's something interesting to explore. So you want to take us out?
Hang in there with us, and we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope that you'll subscribe and like this video if you liked it, and give us some comments.
I think that's it.
All right.
Good job. See everybody. See you next time.